Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today for some virtual vitamin Z as we bring the Detroit Zoo to you. My name is Claire and I'm a curator of education with the Detroit Zoological Society, where we are celebrating and saving wildlife. Today we wanted to give a special shout out and a huge thank you to the Ford Motor Fund Company for supporting all of our live programming this week. Thank you for your support and your continued support to the Detroit Zoological Society, and thank you for helping us bring all of this programming to our community in these unprecedented times. So today, on June 1st, we are celebrating Butterfly Awareness and Education Day. So we're going to be bringing all things butterfly to you. And to start, we're going to look at a little bit of vocabulary. We're going to be talking about oak savannas, chrysalis, and host plants this morning as we explore some of the butterflies in our area and beyond. So let's start by looking at the 10 to 15 different species that the Detroit Zoological Society provides care for at any one time in the butterfly garden. Now, if any of you are looking really closely, somebody has already pointed out, I'm sure, that there's a bird in this lineup of butterflies. And that's true. This is a tanager, a turquoise tanager, actually. And the tanagers don't eat butterflies, so there's no threat to the butterflies in the garden. So they cohabitate. And all of these butterflies come to us as chrysalises, which is part of their life cycle. It starts with an egg, turns into a caterpillar, which voraciously eats a host plant. Most butterflies only have a single type of plant that they can lay their eggs on, so those caterpillars can eat it. Then they turn into a chrysalis, and then eventually into a butterfly. So when they come to the zoo, they come as a chrysalis, and they go into this special holding area until they're ready to emerge from their chrysalis and be released out into the butterfly garden. And these chrysalises are sustainably grown, sustainably raised down in Panama and Costa Rica, and mailed to us, and then, like I mentioned, put into this special case that's perfectly climate controlled before they're released out into the butterfly garden. Now, if you've never been to the Detroit Zoo, the butterfly garden is attached to the Wildlife Interpretive Gallery. And the Wildlife Interpretive Gallery is a really neat space that's an opportunity for people to explore their relationships with all kinds of wildlife through art, so sculpture and paintings and other creative forms of expression. So it's a really neat place to have kind of this reflective moment, and then you walk into the butterfly garden where you're surrounded by these beautiful winged insects and just an opportunity to kind of relax and rejuvenate. So not only do we have butterflies in our care in the butterfly garden, but for several years we participated in a really important head starting program. And I'll explain what a head starting program is. But we were helping a tiny little butterfly that's native to Michigan and other areas of the Midwest. They're only about an inch big, and that is the Karner blue. So here's a picture of the Karner blue butterflies. So they live in a very special type of habitat. It's called an oak savanna. And they need this type of habitats to survive because this is where their host plant, which happens to be the lupine, naturally grows. So this is an oak savanna, and these are categorized by large oak trees, which are well established, and only about 50% canopy cover, which means the leaves and the tops of the trees only cover about 50% or half of the ground cover. So a lot of sunlight comes down, so plants like lupine can grow. Now, unfortunately, the oak savannas were very appealing to European settlers as they moved across the United States to find places to live. This looks like a pretty nice place to set roots, right? I mean, beautiful oak trees, all this undergrowth and these beautiful plants. It was easy to get through there. It wasn't like trying to get through a woods. So they were very heavily settled and developed. Roads came over them. And one of the most important parts is the natural occurring wildfires stopped occurring. Humans have controlled wildfires very well in some parts of the earth, and this is one of them. And the oak savanna needs those wildfires. When lightning strikes, sometimes it'll light a tree on fire and a wildfire will spread through and it'll burn out all the underbrush. So the small trees and the shrubs, all those plants that kind of shade out plants like lupine that grow. Well, without those wildfires happening, all these forests start to fill in, so the ones that weren't being developed by humans were now filling in, and that lupine can't grow anymore. In fact, there used to be about 50 million acres of oak savanna in the Midwest, and now by all accounts, they estimate there's about 30,000 acres left. So what does that look like? I made you a picture. Imagine this is these 100 squares represent oak savanna. And now, if you may have noticed, there's this little tiny red dot in the middle. That's even larger than the amount of oak savanna that's still left out of all of the space that used to be there. So imagine for a second that this is your yard, and you used to have all this space to grow and have space and move around in and play in, and now your yard has been shrunk down to that tiny little red box. That's a problem. Fortunately, there's a lot of organizations who are working together to help protect the Karner blue and bring them back from the point of being endangered. So back in 2005, 2006, we started partnering with several other organizations exploring how we could help, and we decided on a head starting program, which means we go out into the oak savannas that are left, collect the butterfly eggs, the Karner blue butterfly eggs off of the leaves, bring them back to the Detroit Zoo, and we created this big hoop house, which is like a greenhouse, full of lupine plants. And we would put the caterpillars on the lupine plants so they could grow up and get a head start at life. And then once the butterflies were ready for release, we could release them. The first release happened in 2007, and between 2007 and 2013, we helped release over 1,500 Karner blue butterflies in Michigan, down in their endemic different areas of oak savanna habitat. So it's a really amazing project that we participated in for several years. Now, it's also important to note that head starting programs like this aren't just happening at the Detroit Zoo, but in other places and with other communities that we work with. I have the privilege of facilitating our international conservation work that happens through conservation education down in the Amazon rainforest. And on one of my trips down there, we often visit communities on my trips down there. And we stopped by this community one day, and they had this big sign out front that talked about a butterfly conservation project, and we wanted to learn more. So we stopped. So this community has done all of this on their own initiative, and I thought it was a really good sign as we were getting off the boat that this beautiful swallowtail landed on the side, almost as if he or she was acting as the welcoming committee. And as we got off the boat and we started to walk up, there was another sign that was welcoming us, and it says, Bienvenidos al Bosque Sagrado de los Guerreros de la Amazonia. And what that roughly translates to is, welcome to the sacred forest of the warriors of the Amazon. And we went in, and they had this amazing house made out of wood structure and then had screen all over it, and they were head starting butterflies in this tiny community on the side of the Amazon River, because the people who lived there understood how important butterflies are to the rainforest ecosystem, and they wanted to do their part to help ensure that they were surviving. Butterflies have that long life cycle to go through, and there's a lot of opportunities for other animals to come in and eat them at different stages, as eggs, caterpillars, chrysalises, and as butterflies. So they're helping ensure that there's more butterflies being released out into the habitat where they naturally occur. So here's a chrysalis inside that amazing structure they built for the head starting. It looks just like a leaf, which is a pretty good camouflage. And I took a couple more pictures of different chrysalises inside one of their labs where they were working. And then they gave us a complete tour of all their work. They had collected old pop bottles and any containers that they could find, and they were raising all of these different caterpillars on the host plants that they needed before they could turn into the chrysalises and provide care for them before releasing them. So this is all the same species of butterfly here, from a tiny caterpillar, slightly larger, it's still growing, still same species, but look how big that caterpillar gets. It's so incredible. And that's the largest picture of them. Here's a couple more caterpillars that are down here, and I wish I could have written down all of their names so I could share that with you. I'm still learning Spanish. I've been studying it for 5 years, and it was all I could do to get all the scientific lingo that they were talking about with their whole conservation effort. This is a whole picture of their whole lab, and part of the way that they sustain themselves and raise money is they will take butterflies, and you can see some over here that are just about ready to be released, and they'll charge a nominal fee for people in local communities to purchase these butterflies to do things like celebrate people's lives. So when someone passes away, they'll often release butterflies as like a celebration of their life. And this is something that you may have heard happening back in the United States too. People will buy butterflies, they'll be shipped to them, and then they can release them for things like weddings and other events. So if you ever do decide to partake in an activity like that, there's a couple things that you should know. First off, make sure you're getting a species that can survive in the area that you're going to be releasing them. So like if you wanted to release monarchs, make sure it's a place where monarchs live and survive naturally. Make sure it's the right time of year too. Butterflies are cold-blooded, so they rely on the temperature of the atmosphere to survive. And if it's too cold, they won't be able to survive. And also do a little bit of homework to see where those butterflies are coming from. What type of head starting program are they doing? Are they collecting them from the wild? There's quite a few things to consider. So just make sure if you do decide to participate in something like that, that it is an informed decision. All right, I have 2 more pictures from the rainforest to share with you. This one I had to share because they look so much like a Karner blue. It's not. This is a rainforest species. And then when we're down in the rainforest, typically you think of butterflies spending a lot of time on flowers, and that's where you'd expect to see them. Most of the butterflies that I see down in the Amazon rainforest are in mud puddles or on the side of the banks of the Amazon and Napo rivers. So what is that all about? Why are these butterflies hanging out in mud puddles? So I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that there's special minerals and salts that are in the clayey soil that's down there that are actually really important to the life cycle of a male reproductive cycle. So they're down there collecting those salts and those minerals. And if you look really closely at my Karner blue lookalike friend here, you can see his or her tongue kind of probing onto my hand. And that's because the Amazon rainforest is really hot. So you sweat a bit when you're down there. And this butterfly is looking for the salts on my skin to see if he or she can absorb some of those and suck some of those up, which I thought was pretty neat. There will be times when we're down there and you'll see hundreds upon hundreds of these butterflies eating those minerals and salts out of the soil. All right, to celebrate Butterfly Awareness Day, I have an easy activity for you, and you just need a couple materials. You're gonna need some twine, or you could also use yarn or some thin ribbon, some old magazines, scissors, and a ruler. All right, so let's get started. I made a little video for you so I could show you all the different parts. So I found this old magazine that had come in the mail, and I cut out squares that were 3 inches by 3 inches. So these are my 3-inch squares. I'm going to fold them into triangles, and then I'm going to do an accordion fold on either side, back and forth. I'm going to do this side first, folding so they all have the same width there, so they're all about the same width. And we're going to turn this into a garland, and I'll show you how to attach them to the twine garland like I did. And even young children can help with this one. It was kind of relaxing to fold all of these different butterflies, and my daughters got in on it too. They're younger, preschool and 1st grade age, and they needed a little help with the folding, but they were still able to do it pretty successfully. And I was pretty pleased to have had this bright, colorful piece of magazine to recycle for this today. And then I fold it in half. Again, make sure your folds are really nice and creased. So those are going to be your top wings. And now this square is 2 1/4 inches by 2 1/4 inches. And I'm going to get my scissors out, and I'm going to curve off the ends of it. And now I'm not going to fold this one in half, but I'm going to do an accordion fold that's about the same width as the folds on my first square. So we're just going to go back and forth over the whole square. And this gets easier and faster the more times you do it. So by the time you hit your 12th butterfly, you're practically a professional magazine piece folder. You can add that to your resume. Just like the first one, we're going to fold it in half, again giving it a really good crease. Perfect. Now if you put these two together, you can see how these butterflies kind of start to form and look. Now if you want to make a garland, this one's already started, so I'm going to take my twine, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out about how far apart my butterflies already are on there. And I'm going to loop my twine around to make a loop, just like if you were tying your shoes, that first part of the loop. So there you go, you can see the opening. And again, I'm going to measure it out to make sure it's about the same distance. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mine were off by just a little bit. And then I'm going to tuck in my butterflies, and I'm going to turn them over so the really colorful part is on the front, and then I'm going to tie the knot on the back. And I'm going to give 2 knots on there just to ensure that they stay exactly where I want them to. Perfect, so we got that. So by doing this, you're obviously practicing some fine motor skills because it takes a little bit to fold those things back and forth. And this is actually really good practice for my daughters who are both learning their fine penmanship skills. So it builds those muscles that they need to hold on to their pens and pencils. And it's also practicing sustainability. So you get an opportunity to join us on the Detroit Zoological Society's Green Journey of reusing and repurposing materials. And you can see my garland is here hung up in the back. And I've promised my daughters that they can have it. Their butterflies are on one of the ends here. I'm not sure which end. And even if you don't want to make an entire garland, even if you just make one and tie it up like this, it makes a really neat decoration for something like a gift bag. So simple and quick. If you only want to make one, here's another example of how you can use them. So thank you for joining me today for Butterfly Awareness and Education Day. We talked a little bit about the butterflies in our care at the Detroit Zoo. We talked about an amazing conservation program helping Karner blue butterflies, which are native to Michigan and endangered, and how the Detroit Zoological Society has been able to help with that initiative. And we learned about a head starting program on the side of the Amazon River who are working to save Amazon butterflies. And I left you with a great activity. So thanks again to the Ford Motor Company Fund for your support this week for all of our live programming. We really appreciate your continued support. For everyone out there, until I see you again, stay safe and take care of each other.